There is one calendar decision that could quietly cost you tens of thousands of dollars in retirement, and almost nobody talks about it. It is not your investment mix. It is not. Even when you claim Social Security, it is the actual month you walk out the door and officially retire. Pick the wrong month, and you could trigger a bigger tax bill, a Medicare penalty, or a Social Security shortfall that follows you for years. Pick the right month, and you could walk into retirement with more money, less stress, and a smoother start than you ever imagined. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which months tend to work in your favor, which month causes the most regret among retirees, and the simple way to figure out your own personal best retirement date. No matter your age or income, if you find this kind of practical, no-nonsense retirement guidance helpful, take a quick second to like this video and subscribe to Mr. Retiree. It genuinely helps this channel. Keep making videos that protect your hard-earned savings, and it costs you nothing. Here's what we are going to cover together. We will talk about why the calendar matters so much more than most people realize. We will look at the hidden traps tied to Social Security timing, Medicare enrollment, and end-of-year taxes. We will walk through a real example of a couple who almost made a costly mistake, and how they fixed it. And I will give you a simple checklist you can use to pick your own smartest retirement month. Stay with me until the end, because the worst month to retire is one that catches almost every single retiree completely off guard. And I promise you it is not the month you are thinking of right now. Let's start with the foundation. Most people assume retirement is just a personal decision, like picking a moving date. You work until you feel ready. You turn in your notice, and that's that. But retirement isn't just a personal event. It's also a financial event that intersects with the government's calendar. Social Security runs on a monthly clock. Medicare runs on strict enrollment windows tied to your birthday and your work status. And the IRS runs on a January to December tax year that doesn't care when you feel emotionally ready to stop working. When your personal timeline collides with these government timelines in the wrong way, that's when expensive mistakes happen. But here's where things get interesting. Most retirees never realize that the month they retire can quietly shift them into a higher tax bracket for that final year, simply because of the extra income they already earned from January through their retirement date. Picture this. You work a full salary from January through October, then retire. That's 10 months of regular paychecks. Add in a final bonus, unused vacation payout, or even Social Security starting mid-year, and suddenly your total income for that year looks nothing like what it will look like the following year. Some retirees end up paying more in taxes during their very last working year than they ever expected, simply because they didn't think about how the months stacked up. Now, here's something many people overlook. If you retire early in the year, say in February or March, your total earned income for that year is much lower. That can open the door to some real tax planning opportunities, like converting part of a traditional IRA into a Roth IRA while you're sitting in a lower tax bracket for those remaining months. Think about it like filling up a bucket. Each tax bracket is like a bucket with a certain size. If you retire early, your income bucket for that year is smaller, so you have extra room to pour in some Roth conversion income without spilling over into a higher tax rate. Retire late in the year, after a full 12 months of salary, and that bucket is already nearly full, leaving little to no room for smart tax moves. This brings us to another important point, and it's one that trips up more people than almost anything else in retirement planning: Medicare. If you are turning 65 around the time you retire, the timing of your Medicare enrollment is not flexible the way people assume. You get a 7-month window surrounding your 65th birthday to sign up. And if you're retiring and losing employer coverage at the same time, you also get a special enrollment period tied to your last day of work. Miss these windows, even by a few weeks, and you could face a permanent late enrollment penalty added to your Medicare Part B premium for the rest of your life. Not just 1 year. Every single year you have Medicare. Let's say you plan to retire in December, right at year's end, thinking it would be a clean, tidy way to close out your working life. But your 65th birthday was back in June. If you weren't paying close attention, you might have missed your ideal Medicare enrollment window entirely. leaving a painful gap in coverage or a penalty that follows you for decades. This is exactly why the calendar matters so much more than people expect. Retirement isn't one date. It's several dates that all need to line up: your last paycheck, your Medicare enrollment, and often your Social Security start date too. Speaking of Social Security, here's where things get even more interesting. Social Security benefits are calculated and paid based on full calendar months. If you retire mid-month, that month typically doesn't count as a month of retirement for benefit purposes. In certain situations, and depending on your specific circumstances, it can affect exactly when your first payment shows up and how it's calculated. On top of that, if you're retiring before your full retirement age and still earning income that year, the Social Security earnings test can temporarily reduce your benefits if you earn above a certain limit. Many retirees don't realize that this earnings test is applied on a monthly basis during your first year of benefits, which means the specific month you start collecting can make a real difference in how much of your benefit actually gets withheld. We'll come back to Social Security in just a moment. But let's talk about why all of this happens in the first place, because understanding the why makes the whole picture click into place. The government's programs, Social Security, Medicare, and the tax system were never designed around your personal retirement party. They're massive systems built on calendar years, birth months, and enrollment periods that apply to millions of people at once. There's no way for those systems to know that you specifically wanted to retire on your anniversary date or right after a big family vacation. That mismatch between your personal timeline and the government's rigid calendar is exactly where costly mistakes are born. So, what is the actual smartest month to retire? Here's the honest answer, and I promise it's more useful than a single magic month, because the truth is, the best month depends on your personal mix of income, age, and goals. That said, there are patterns that tend to work in most retirees' favor. Retiring early in the year, particularly January through March, is often financially cleaner because it minimizes your earned income for that transition year, giving you more control over your tax bracket and more room for strategies like Roth conversions or careful capital gains harvesting. It also gives you nearly a full calendar year to settle into retirement before facing your first full tax season as a retiree, which reduces confusion and mistakes. On the other hand, retiring right around your birthday month, especially if that birthday is your 65th, can be smart because it naturally aligns your Medicare enrollment window with your retirement date, reducing the risk of gaps or penalties. And for some people, retiring at the very end of the year, in November or December, can make sense if they want to max out that final year's income before a significant pay raise or bonus. Then start fresh in January with a clean, lower income year for tax planning. Now, let's talk about the worst month to retire, the one that catches almost everyone off guard. It's not a random month picked for shock value. It's late in the year, specifically retiring in November or December without any planning around Medicare or Social Security timing. Here's why this trips up so many people. If your birthday and Medicare eligibility already passed earlier in the year, and you delayed retiring until the very end of the year purely out of habit, like waiting until the end of the fiscal year or the end of the calendar year, you may have missed your ideal window to make strategic tax moves. And you might be scrambling to sort out Medicare paperwork during the busiest, most stressful time of year, right around the holidays, when government offices are slower to respond and open enrollment periods overlap with everything else going on in your life. Let me walk you through a real example so you can see exactly how this plays out. Meet Robert and Linda Carter, fictional couple from Ohio. Robert is 64, Linda is 62. Robert has worked as a plant supervisor for 30 years, earning around $85,000 a year. Linda has worked part-time as a school administrator, and together they've built a retirement nest egg of about $640,000, split between Robert's 401k, small pension, and a joint IRA account. Robert's original plan was simple: retire on December 31st, right after his birthday, which happens to fall in October. It felt tidy, like a clean bookend to his career. But when they sat down and mapped out the calendar carefully, they realized this plan had a hidden cost. Because Robert's birthday in October meant his Medicare enrollment window had already opened months earlier, but he wasn't planning to actually apply until his December retirement date. That delay risked pushing his Medicare Part B start date later than ideal, creating a possible coverage gap right as he stopped having employer insurance. On top of that, working a full 12 months meant Robert's income for that final year would be at its absolute highest, leaving zero room to do any Roth conversions or manage his tax bracket before Social Security and required minimum distributions kicked in years down the road. Picture Robert sitting at the kitchen table, looking at these numbers with Linda, both of them realizing that a decision that felt purely personal actually had real financial consequences they hadn't considered. So here's what they did instead. They shifted Robert's retirement date to February of the following year, just 6 weeks later than originally planned. That small shift meant Robert's income for his final transition year dropped significantly, since he was only working about 7 weeks instead of a full 12 months. This opened up real breathing room in a lower tax bracket, allowing them to convert a portion of Robert's traditional IRA into a Roth IRA that same year at a much lower tax cost than if he'd worked the full year. They also used those early months to properly time Robert's Medicare enrollment around his October birthday window, avoiding any penalty risk entirely. And because Linda was still a couple years from her own Social Security decision, they used the same period to map out exactly which month would make sense for her to start benefits down the road, rather than defaulting to a random birthday-based guess. The result? By simply shifting the retirement month and thinking through the calendar with intention instead of habit, Robert and Linda avoided a Medicare penalty that could have cost them hundreds of dollars a year for the rest of their lives. And they created a Roth conversion opportunity that will likely save them thousands in taxes over the next decade as required minimum distributions come into play, all from a 6-week shift in timing that cost them nothing extra to make. The next step changes everything. So let's talk about some advanced tips you can use to apply this same thinking to your own situation. First, always map out your birthday relative to your planned retirement date, especially if you're approaching 65, so you can align Medicare enrollment perfectly instead of leaving it to chance. Second, before locking in a retirement date, estimate your total income for that final working year, including salary, bonuses, unused vacation payouts, and any other lump sums, so you know exactly what tax bracket you're likely to land in. Third, if you're retiring before full retirement age and plan to start Social Security early, look closely at the earnings test rules for that specific year, because starting benefits mid-year while still having earned income can create temporary withholding that catches people by surprise. Fourth, consider whether an early year retirement date might give you a cleaner runway for strategic moves like Roth conversions, tax loss harvesting, or simply having a full calendar year to adjust to your new budget before tax season arrives. Let's build on that with one more layer many people miss entirely: healthcare costs before Medicare eligibility. If you're retiring before 65, the month you retire directly affects how many months you'll need alternative health coverage, whether that's COBRA, a marketplace plan, or a spouse's employer plan. Retiring mid-year can sometimes create a shorter, more manageable coverage gap than retiring right after a birthday. So this is absolutely something to calculate rather than guess at. Now, before we wrap up, let's bring this back to what retirement is really about. It's not about spreadsheets and enrollment windows for their own sake. It's about being able to watch your grandchildren grow up without worrying about a surprise tax bill. It's about traveling to that place you've always dreamed of without stress hanging over the trip. It's about protecting the money you spent 30 or 40 years earning, so it actually supports the life you pictured, instead of leaking away through avoidable penalties and missed opportunities. Every dollar you save through smart timing is a dollar that stays in your life, your family, and your future. Instead of disappearing into a preventable mistake, let's bring together everything we've covered into a simple checklist you can keep in mind. Know your Medicare enrollment window and align your retirement date around it if you're near 65. Estimate your income for your final working year before locking in a date. so you understand your tax bracket. Consider an early year retirement if you want more room for Roth conversions or other tax strategies. Understand the Social Security earnings test if you're claiming benefits before full retirement age while still earning income. And always look at healthcare coverage gaps if you're retiring before Medicare eligibility. Walk through these 5 points with your own numbers, and you'll already be ahead of most people who simply pick a date based on habit or emotion alone. Quick reminder before we close out. This video is meant to be educational, giving you a framework to think through your own situation, not personalized financial or tax advice for your specific circumstances. Everyone's income, family situation, and goals are different. So it's always worth sitting down with a qualified financial advisor or tax professional who can look at your full picture before you lock in a retirement date. Here's my honest encouragement to you. You've already done something powerful just by watching this video, because most people never stop to think this carefully about something as simple as a calendar date. That kind of intentional thinking is exactly what separates a stressful retirement from a confident one. You don't need to have it all figured out today. You just need to start asking the right questions. The same ones we walked through together. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. It genuinely means a lot that you trust this channel to help you plan the retirement you've worked so hard for. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. What month are you currently planning to retire? And did anything in this video make you want to rethink that date? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you know someone, a spouse, a sibling, close friend, who is getting close to retirement and might be making the same calendar mistake without realizing it, do them a favor and share this video with them. It could genuinely save them thousands of dollars. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.